Over a quiet valley, the sky stretched wide and clean. Evening was already moving in, and the light was soft and flat. Most clouds had drifted away earlier, leaving long spaces of clear air. Only one cloud remained near the center of the sky. It was shaped like a slow pile of cotton, with round edges and a gently flattened base. It did not slide toward the horizon. It did not thin and disappear. It simply stayed. Below, the valley held a small town with low roofs and narrow streets. Beyond the town, open fields spread out in simple blocks of darker and lighter grass. A river bent through the valley in a smooth curve, its surface darkening as the sky dimmed. On the far side, low hills formed a steady line, like a quiet wall in the distance. The cloud remained centered above all of it, holding its shape, while the rest of the sky slowly changed color. In the town, lamps began to turn on one by one. Street lamps formed warm dots along the main road. Windows lit up in soft squares, some bright, some dim. A small market street showed a few signs under glass, their lettering pale under lamp glow. A bakery window held a simple display shelf, dark behind the glass. A small bookshop sign hung above a closed door, swinging by a tiny amount, then settling again. At the town's center, a stone square held a fountain that was off for the night. The fountain basin kept still water, and the still water held a faint reflection of the sky. The single cloud appeared there as a soft, gray patch, steady and calm, like a painted shape set in the basin. Above the rooftops, the cloud stayed in the same place, and its wide shadow rested gently over the valley fields. Not sharp, only a slight change in tone on the land. The river moved past the town with a slow, steady current. In the evening, the water reflected the sky as a long, dark band, broken by thin highlights. As night grew deeper, the river began to reflect the town lights as well, turning them into stretched lines that trembled and straightened and trembled again. A stone bridge crossed the river near the edge of town. The bridge had one wide arch and a simple railing. Small lamps along the bridge cast warm pools onto the walkway. Under the arch, water slid through with quiet motion. The cloud above appeared in the river reflection too, as a pale shape floating on dark water. Because the cloud did not move, its reflection stayed in almost the same place, shifting only when ripples passed. The bridge lights stayed steady, and the river carried their reflections onward in long, thin ribbons. On the east side of the valley, a low hill rose with a narrow road that curved upward. The road was pale and smooth, worn by time. Along the top of the hill, a fence line ran straight, posts spaced evenly, wire pulled tight between them. A small stand of trees sat partway up the slope, their trunks thin and their leaves forming a dark cluster. From the hilltop, the town lights looked like scattered beads, and the river looked like a black ribbon with warm marks laid on it. Above, the sky held stars in the clear areas. The stars were small and sharp, and they formed loose clusters. But where the cloud hovered, the stars were hidden behind that soft gray shape. The cloud stayed centered, as if placed there with care, while the rest of the sky continued its normal shift into deeper night. Near the town's edge, a small train station sat beside a straight stretch of track. The platform lights were on, making clean pools of light on the pavement. A bench sat under a shelter, empty and still. A timetable board hung on the wall, lines too small to read from a distance, but clearly arranged in neat rows. A signal light near the tracks blinked slowly, one steady color then another, then back again. The rails reflected a thin shine where the platform lamps reached them, then faded into darkness farther down the line. The station roof was low and simple, and the station building windows were dark. The cloud above did not respond to any of this. It stayed in the same place, holding its shape over the valley, while the station lights and signal blink continued their small, repeating pattern. Late evening deepened into full night. The cloud, once brighter in daylight, became a soft, gray shape. A moon rose behind the hills, not full, but bright enough to add a cool shine to the upper sky. Moonlight touched the cloud rim and made a thin silver line along one side. The rest of the cloud remained even and smooth, like a thick blanket of mist held in one place. Inside the cloud, faint layers could be seen, lighter bands and darker bands, like many thin sheets overlapping. Some parts of the cloud looked slightly thinner, showing a softer gray, while other parts looked thicker and more solid. The cloud did not travel, but its surface shifted slowly in place. A rounded edge softened, a small bulge smoothed out, a thin band formed, and then faded. The cloud remained centered, while the town below kept its quiet grid of lights and shadows. In the town square, the stone paving held a faint shine from the street lamps. The fountain remained off, but its basin water stayed calm. A few leaves rested near the fountain edge, dark and flat. The cloud reflection in the basin remained steady. When a small breeze passed through the square, the basin's surface rippled lightly, and the cloud reflection broke into soft pieces, then rejoined as the water smoothed. Around the square, shop doors stayed closed. Signs and awnings were quiet shapes. A clock tower above one building showed a pale clock face that caught light and returned it softly. The hands moved with calm certainty. Above the clock tower, the cloud stayed fixed in the same portion of sky, blocking a wide patch of stars and creating a soft ceiling over the town center. Outside the town, open fields stretched toward the hills. The grass was short and even, and dew began to form, giving the field a faint shine in moonlight. Near the far edge of one field stood an old barn with a sloped roof. Its wooden boards showed long grain lines. The barn doors were shut, and a small window near the roof line was dark. A fence ran beside the barn, posts repeating into the distance. Above the field, the cloud remained centered, and its broad shadow rested over part of the plain. At night, that shadow was not dark, only a change in tone, like a thin cloth laid over the grass. The moonlight still reached the field, but the cloud softened it, making the light less sharp. The barn roofline stayed steady against the valley, and the cloud stayed steady above it, both holding their shapes through the slow hours. Farther downriver, the water curved around a reed bank. The reeds stood in thick rows, their tops forming a soft, uneven edge. The river here was quieter, and reflections were longer. A few town lights reached this bend as thin lines on the surface. Above, the cloud's reflection drifted in the water like a pale stain, not moving far, only trembling when the current shifted. A small wooden post near the bank held a tied rope, and the rope dipped toward the water, then rose again, following tiny movements. The reed shadows lay in dark patches along the edge. The sky above remained clear in many places, with stars showing sharply. The cloud continued to block the center patch of sky, and the river continued to mirror that blocked space as a calm, pale shape. As midnight passed, The clear sky around the cloud looked more star-filled. The stars appeared brighter where the air was clean and open. A loose ring of stars seemed to circle the cloud's position, simply because the cloud hid the center and left the surrounding sky visible. The moon climbed higher, and its cool light made rooftops and fence posts slightly clearer. Shadows on the hills became smoother. In the town, a few more windows went dark, leaving fewer bright squares. Street lamps remained steady. The station lights stayed on. The river kept its long reflections. And above it all, the cloud stayed in the same place, creating a stable blank space in the sky, while the ring of stars around it looked sharp and still. The cloud did not move across the sky, but it did change in tiny ways. A lower edge lifted slightly, then settled back. A rounded corner became flatter. A thin seam formed through the middle, like a soft crease, then faded. The moonlight on the rim shifted as the moon angle changed, moving the silver line from one edge to another. In the town, the clock tower continued its steady work. In the market street, a hanging sign made one small swing and then stopped. On the hill, the fence line remained straight and dark. The station signal blink continued its slow pattern. The river carried reflections onward. The cloud remained centered through all of it, holding position while its surface slowly smoothed and reshaped in place. The deepest part of night settled over the valley. The town was mostly dark now, with only street lamps and a few windows still lit. The river looked darker, and reflections became thinner. The fields appeared as wide, soft blocks of tone. The hills stayed as a steady outline. The cloud remained as the main shape in the sky, still centered, still soft, still holding a patch of blank gray where stars could not be seen. Moonlight continued to wash over the scene, cool and even. Nothing changed quickly. The cloud did not drift. The town did not brighten. The river did not flash. The valley held its calm night pattern, and the cloud stayed in place as if it had chosen this exact spot and decided to remain there until the sky began to lighten. Very late, the cloud began to thin at the edges. The rim looked less round and more delicate, like soft threads. Moonlight passed through the thinner parts and made the border look lighter. A few stars became faintly visible near the edge, not clear at first, then clearer as the thinning continued. The center remained thicker, still a soft gray block in the sky. Below, the river reflection showed the same change. The pale patch in the water became lighter near its edges, and the outline broke gently when ripples passed. In the town square, the fountain basin reflected the cloud with a softer, more faded shape. The cloud still did not travel, but it began to lose weight and density in place, turning from a solid-looking mass into a lighter veil. The town roofs sat in clean layers, one behind another, each roof a simple triangle or flat plane. Chimneys rose in small dark blocks. A few roof tiles caught faint moonlight and showed a soft pattern. Between buildings, narrow streets formed dark channels with warm street lamp dots spaced along them. The lamps did not flicker. They stayed steady, making small pools on stone and pavement. The cloud remained centered above the valley, and the town felt as if it rested under a soft cover. The cloud's shadow was not sharp, but it made the rooftops look slightly softer, slightly less clear than the roofs beyond the cloud's reach. The clock tower face remained pale, and its hands continued their slow movement. No sudden sounds appeared. The scene held a steady, quiet look, Roofs, lamps, a river curve, and one cloud holding still overhead. The bridge lamps continued to cast warm pools on stone. Those pools made the bridge look like a calm line of light over dark water. On the river surface, reflections stretched into long ribbons. Each ribbon trembled slightly, then straightened, then trembled again, following the river's slow movement. The cloud reflection remained as a pale patch among the ribbons, softer at the edge than before. The pale patch shifted in shape only when the water rippled. The actual cloud above did not travel. Its thinning edge became more clear under moonlight, and the rim looked like a light gray fringe. Around the cloud, stars held steady in the clear sky, and the river carried the same star light in tiny scattered marks that appeared and disappeared with each ripple. From the hilltop fence line, the valley looked wide and calm. The fence posts formed a straight row, and thin wire lines ran between them in steady bands. The town lights below looked fewer now, but the street lamps still made a quiet pattern. The station platform lights still glowed at the edge of town, and the signal continued its slow blink. The river line was visible as a darker shape, with warm marks where lamps reflected. Above it all, the cloud remained at the center of the sky, still anchored in place. Its edge was thinner now, and faint stars could be seen near the rim. The center remained thicker, like a soft gray island. The hill trees stood in a dark cluster, leaves still, trunks like thin marks. The whole view stayed unchanged in its layout, as if the valley was a simple model: lights in small rows, water in one curve, hills in one line, and one cloud at the exact middle. The station platform showed small details under its lights: a bench with a simple backrest, a shelter post, a trash bin near the wall, and a sign with clean lettering. The rails held a thin shine where light reached them, then turned dark again beyond the platform. A small fence near the tracks made a repeating pattern of vertical bars. The station building windows remained dark. The timetable board hung flat, its rows of lines calm and neat. The signal light blinked at a steady pace, never speeding, never slowing. Above the station roof, the cloud remained in the same portion of sky, and the cloud's thinner rim looked slightly brighter where moonlight touched it. The valley felt steady, as if each small structure had found its place for the night and stayed there. The cloud's rim continued to thin. The rounded edges became softer and lighter, like a pale haze around a darker center. A few stars showed through the rim now, faint at first, then clearer as the edge loosened. The cloud's base lifted slightly, then settled, changing its outline by small degrees, but never moving its position in the sky. The moonlight line along the rim shifted slowly as the moon climbed, sliding from one side to another. The cloud looked less like a heavy shape and more like a layer of mist held in place. Below, the town roofs and fields remained quiet and unchanged. The river reflection of the cloud grew more transparent at the edges, turning into a soft smear rather than a clear patch. The market street stayed closed and still. Shop windows showed only dark interiors and faint reflections of street lamps. A hanging sign above the bookshop stayed still now, no longer swinging. Stone paving held a soft shine where lamplight touched it. Near the fountain square, a low wall bordered a small planted bed, and leaves there looked dark and glossy from night moisture. The fountain basin water remained calm and held a faint sky reflection. The cloud reflection in the basin looked lighter, and less solid, as if the water was reflecting a thinner layer of cloud. Above the street, the sky around the cloud showed more stars. The cloud remained centered, holding its place like a quiet ceiling over the town center, while everything below stayed orderly and unchanged. Outside the town, fields spread out with simple borders. A fence line here, a ditch line there, a thin row of shrubs marking a boundary. The grass held dew, making it shine faintly. The barn stood at the far edge of one field. Doors shut, roofline clear. The tarp over the hay bales formed a low, dark shape, held down by stones at the corners. Fence posts repeated into darkness with even spacing. The cloud above softened the moonlight over part of the fields, making that area look slightly more gray, slightly less sharp. The fields beyond the cloud's reach looked a little clearer, a little brighter. Still, the difference was gentle, like two shades of the same cloth. The cloud did not travel. The fields did not change. The valley stayed calm in wide blocks of quiet land, under a sky that slowly thinned at the center. Farther downriver, another small bridge crossed a narrow bend. It was simpler than the stone bridge near town, with a wooden deck and plain railings. A single lamp stood at one end, casting a small, warm circle. The river under this bridge moved slowly, and reflections were longer because the water was smoother. The cloud reflection appeared there too, pale and stretched, with softer edges than before. Reeds along the bank formed dark clusters, and their reflections made thin, vertical marks in the water. The lamp's reflection formed one long, warm line that bent with ripples. The cloud above remained centered, and its rim now allowed more faint stars to appear near the edge. The river carried the same change. The pale patch became more transparent at the sides, more like a veil than a block. As the cloud thinned, the clear sky around it looked even more filled with stars. The stars formed scattered groups, some brighter than others, but the main effect was the wide, open space. The cloud still hid the center, but the rim began to reveal points of light. It looked like a soft circle of gray with small pinpoints showing through its border. The stars did not move quickly. They held steady positions, and the cloud stayed in the same place among them. Below, the town lights grew fewer as more windows turned off. Street lamps stayed. Station lights stayed. The river continued to carry long reflections. The hills remained a steady silhouette. The cloud remained the main shape in the sky, now lighter at the edges, with the ring of stars around it appearing sharper by contrast. Inside the cloud, faint openings began to appear. These were not sharp holes, but thinner areas where the gray became pale enough to show a hint of the sky behind it. A few stars appeared through these thinner spots, dim at first, then slightly clearer as the spots widened. The cloud's center was still thicker than the rim, but it was no longer fully solid. The cloud's outline continued to shift in tiny ways, a bulge smoothing out, a curve becoming flatter, then rounding again. The cloud did not drift. It stayed centered above the valley. The town below stayed quiet, and the river reflections continued their slow tremble and straightened pattern, repeating without change. The clock tower face remained visible, pale under nearby lamplight. The hands moved with calm certainty. The tower's stone sides were dark, and its edges were clean against the sky. From time to time, the cloud's thinner rim let a faint star appear behind the tower top. Then that star faded as the skylight shifted. The tower did not change. The square below it remained still. The fountain basin held quiet water. The cloud above continued to thin, and the valley below continued to rest under the steady lamp pattern. Everything seemed built for quiet repetition. The ticking clock hands, the blinking signal near the station, the river's long reflections, and the cloud's slow change in place. The hill trees remained a dark cluster, their leaves forming a soft mass. The fence line at the top stayed straight. Near the horizon, the sky began to lighten very slightly. Not bright, only a faint shift from deep blue-black to a softer tone. This change was slow and even. The cloud still held its centered position, but the lighter sky made the cloud look less distinct. Its edges blended more into the background, and the rim looked like thin haze. Stars near the horizon began to fade in the lighter band, while stars higher up remained clear. The cloud continued to show small openings inside it, and those openings now looked like pale patches rather than star windows, because the sky itself was slowly changing color. Only a few windows remained lit now. A small square on an upper floor, a thin rectangle in a stairwell, a faint glow behind curtains. Street lamps kept their steady, warm light. The market street stayed shut. The station platform remained lit, and the signal continued blinking at the same pace. The river still carried long, warm lines from lamps. The cloud above stayed in place, lighter and thinner than before. Its reflection in the fountain basin and river became more faint, more spread, less like a clear patch, and more like a soft wash. The valley's shapes became a little clearer as the sky began to soften near the horizon. Roof lines gained definition. The barn's roof edge became easier to see. The cloud continued thinning without traveling. The cloud now looked like a wide veil stretched across the center of the sky. Its edges were no longer thick. The rim blended into the air, and stars showed through in more places. The center still held a slight gray tone, but it was lighter, more even, less solid. The cloud's baseline was harder to find because it was fading into the sky's slow brightening. The cloud remained centered above the valley, but it was becoming less of a shape and more of a soft tone difference. Below, the river reflection of the cloud turned into a faint, pale smear, visible only when the water was smooth. When ripples passed, the smear broke into almost nothing, then returned faintly when the surface calmed again. The river began to show a slight change in color near its far bend. The darkest black turned to deep gray, and the reflection lines from lamps looked less sharp as the background brightened. The bridge stones became clearer. The reed banks gained texture, individual reed tops becoming more visible. The cloud above, now thin, looked almost transparent. The stars around it began to fade slowly as the sky brightened. The cloud held its centered position even as it became harder to see, as if it stayed out of habit, while its substance quietly melted into the air. In the field, the barn boards became visible as long vertical lines. Fence posts gained clearer edges. The tarp over the hay bales showed folds and a dull shine from moisture. Dew on the grass made the field look lightly frosted. The cloud above was now a pale patch, barely darker than the sky. Its rim had almost disappeared. The center still held a faint gray tone, but it was uneven and thin, as if spread too far. The cloud's shadow on the field was no longer noticeable. The field light was now guided more by the brightening sky than by the cloud. Still, the cloud remained centered, fading rather than moving. The last stars began to fade, first near the horizon, then higher up. A few remained visible in the darkest part of the sky, but they grew weaker as the background light increased. The cloud's center cleared more. opening into a lighter area where the sky showed through. The cloud now looked like a soft ring of haze, with a thinner middle, a pale circle that was almost gone. It stayed in place, but its edges dissolved into the sky. The town below remained quiet and unchanged. Street lamps still on. Station lights still on. The clock tower still steady. The river still moving slowly, with long reflections that were now less sharp. The cloud did not suddenly slide away. It simply became so thin that it could no longer hold a clear outline. The faint gray tone spread out and mixed with the morning sky. What had been a centered shape became a barely visible haze, then an even lighter haze, then nothing at all. The center of the sky opened fully. The space where the cloud had stayed all night became plain air, the same as the rest of the sky. The valley below looked the same as before. Roofs, streets, river, fields, only now under a brighter, softer light. The cloud that had held still all night was gone, not by travel, but by quiet thinning, until it blended completely into morning. The sky now carried a clean, pale tone. Street lamps remained on for a little longer, still making warm dots against the growing daylight. The river reflected the lighter sky, and the bridge shapes more clearly. The town's roofs and chimneys were now visible in gentle detail. The hill fence line stood sharp against the brightening background. The station platform lights still glowed, though their effect was smaller now. The fountain basin reflection changed from night to morning, showing pale sky instead of stars. The place where the cloud had been was simply open sky. Everything remained calm and steady, arranged in simple lines and quiet shapes as the morning continued.